Rasputin, the man who wouldn't die. On December 30th, 1916, the infamous Grigory Rasputin met his end, though it took more effort than anyone could have imagined. Born on January 21, 1869 in Siberia, Rasputin lived as a simple peasant until a religious awakening at age 28 transformed him into a self-proclaimed holy man. Throughout his life, he was surrounded by rumors of debauchery, drunkenness, womanizing, and occult rituals. Despite his scandalous reputation, by 1906, Rasputin had found his way into high society, becoming a trusted confidant of Tsar Nicholas II and his family. Tsarina Alexandra believed Rasputin possessed the power to heal her hemophiliac son, Alexei, which only heightened his influence over the royal family. Over the next decade, Rasputin's sway on political matters angered many, and in 1914, a deeply religious woman named Kionia Guseva attempted to assassinate him. She stabbed Rasputin in the stomach, calling him the Antichrist. Rasputin survived, but his unpopularity continued to grow, especially as Russia struggled during World War I. By December 1916, with Russia on the brink of collapse, a group of nobles, led by Prince Felix Yusupov and Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, decided to kill Rasputin. On the night of December 29th, they invited him to a party at the Moika Palace. The details of his murder have become the stuff of legend. Rasputin was first poisoned with cyanide-laced cakes and wine, but the poison seemed to have no effect. Frustrated, Yusupov shot Rasputin in the chest and the conspirators believed he was dead. To their horror, Rasputin later revived and attacked Yusupov before staggering into the courtyard, where he was shot 2 more times. Finally, he was beaten, bound, and thrown into the freezing Malaya Nevka River. 2 days later, Rasputin's body was found downstream, with gunshot wounds and signs of a severe beating. An autopsy confirmed he had been shot 3 times, with 1 bullet to the forehead being fatal, and no trace of poison was found in his system. Rasputin was buried on January 2, 1917. But within months, the Russian Revolution unfolded, and the Romanov dynasty fell. The Mummified Bodies on Mount Everest. Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth, is both a dream and a deadly challenge for climbers. More than 200 bodies are believed to rest on its slopes, perfectly preserved in the ice and snow. As climbers ascend, they face high winds, low oxygen, and freezing temperatures. The risks are immense, and when climbers perish, rescuing their bodies is often impossible, leaving them as frozen landmarks. One of the earliest attempts to conquer Everest came in 1924 when British climbers George Mallory and Andrew Irvine disappeared on the mountain. Mallory's body was found in 1999, still intact with injuries suggesting a fatal fall. Another infamous body is that of Green Boots, an Indian climber who died in 1996 and became a macabre waypoint for those traversing the Northeast Ridge. In 2006, climber David Sharp, trekking alone without enough oxygen, was mistaken for Green Boots as he sat freezing in the same cave. Despite being found alive by passing climbers, he couldn't be rescued and died where he sat. Similarly, Francis Arsentiev, attempting to descend Everest in 1998, became stranded and died despite several rescue attempts. Her husband, Sergei, also perished while trying to save her. Today, the bodies on Everest serve as a grim reminder of the mountain's dangers, forever frozen in time as silent sentinels of the summit. Project Habakkuk, World War II's secret ice aircraft carrier. During World War II, German U-boats wreaked havoc on Allied supply convoys in the Atlantic, sinking vital ships. British inventor Geoffrey Pike proposed a wild idea to counter this threat: a massive, unsinkable aircraft carrier made from ice. Surprisingly, Winston Churchill loved the idea. Pike's vision was for an enormous iceberg-like vessel, hollowed out to house aircraft and fuel, and powered by a generator. Ice was chosen due to steel shortages, but pure ice was too fragile. Instead, a material called pykrete, made from a mix of wood pulp and ice, was developed. Stronger and slower to melt, it seemed like the perfect solution. In 1943, A prototype of the ice ship was built on Patricia Lake in Canada. The model survived both winter and summer, proving the concept was viable. However, practical issues, such as the ship's slow speed and rising costs, led to the project's cancellation. By then, the Allies had gained access to airfields in the Azores, and the ice ship dream was abandoned. The Great Emu War. In 1932, Western Australia witnessed a strange conflict between humans and emus. After World War I, Australian veterans were given land to farm, but the crops were constantly ravaged by 20,000 emus. Frustrated, the farmers called for military intervention, and the government sent soldiers armed with machine guns to deal with the birds. Despite their confidence, the emus proved surprisingly elusive. The birds could outrun the soldiers' gunfire and scattered in small groups, making it nearly impossible to hit them. A mounted machine gun was even used in an attempt to mow down the emus, but the rugged terrain and the birds' speed foiled the plan. After days of failed attempts, the soldiers retreated. Out of 2,500 rounds of ammunition, only a few hundred emus were killed. The war became a national joke, with headlines mocking the military's inability to defeat the flightless birds. In the end, the emus won the Great Emu War, and it wasn't until bounties were introduced that the emu population was effectively controlled. The actress kidnapped by Kim Jong-il to make movies for North Korea. In 1978, a freighter secretly set sail from Hong Kong across the East China Sea to Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea. On board was an unexpected and valuable cargo. Choi Yoon-hee, a 52-year-old iconic South Korean actress who had just been kidnapped by North Korean agents. During the 1950s and 1960s, Choi was immensely popular in South Korea. She founded a film company with her husband, director Shin Sang-ok, and starred in over 130 movies, winning numerous awards, including the prestigious Grand Bell Award, the South Korean equivalent of the Oscars. However, after her divorce from Shin in 1978, her career began to decline. In an effort to revive her acting career, Choi flew to Hong Kong to meet with a man she believed was a businessman interested in involving her in a new film production company. The man, Wang Dong-il, treated her to luxurious restaurants but discussed little business. Choi noticed strange men following her and taking photographs from a distance. A few days later, she was introduced to Lee Sun-hee, a business associate of Wang, and her daughter. They entertained Choi while Wang was supposedly occupied with other matters. During a trip to Repulse Bay for a potential meeting about running a performing academy, Choi was suddenly grabbed by two men, sedated, and whisked away in a speedboat. She had been kidnapped by North Korean operatives. The mastermind behind the abduction was none other than Kim Jong-il, the son of North Korea's then leader Kim Il-sung. An avid film enthusiast, Kim Jong-il owned over 15,000 films and was particularly fond of James Bond movies, especially those starring Sean Connery. He recognized the power of cinema for propaganda and sought to improve North Korea's film industry, which he felt was stagnant and overly dogmatic. To achieve this, he believed he needed established talent from the capitalist South. Upon her arrival in North Korea, Choi was kept in luxurious but isolated and guarded accommodations. Over the next 5 years, Kim Jong-il attempted to win her over by taking her to lavish parties, government ceremonies, and cultural events. She was given expensive gifts and introduced to the supposed virtues of the North Korean state through a dedicated tutor. Choi was regularly taken to operas, museums, and historical landmarks, all aimed at impressing her with the regime's cultural offerings. Meanwhile, Shin Sang-ok became concerned after not hearing from his ex-wife for 6 months. Determined to find her, he flew to Hong Kong, where he too was kidnapped by North Korean agents and brought to Pyongyang. Unlike Choi, Shin resisted indoctrination. After 2 failed escape attempts, he was imprisoned for 2 years and subjected to harsh treatment. In 1983, during a banquet, Choi and Shin were reunited by the North Korean regime and learned they had both been abducted. Kim Jong-il insisted they remarry and begin making films together for North Korea, aiming to legitimize the projects and enhance their quality. One of their first films was the 1984 period drama An Emissary of No Return, set in 1907, and focusing on a Korean emissary seeking Western support against Japanese occupation. Over the next few years, they produced several films, many with anti-Japanese or anti-capitalist themes, such as the 1985 musical fantasy, The Tale of Shim Chong. Their most notable work was Pulgasari in 1985, a Godzilla-like monster movie that did not star Choi. Interestingly, the special effects were created by a Japanese crew who had been deceived into thinking they were working on a Chinese film. While most of their films were cheaply made and propagandistic, one stood out, Salt, 1985. Choi's performance earned her the Best Actress Award at the 14th Moscow International Film Festival, and the film received surprisingly positive reviews from international critics. After nearly a decade in North Korea, the couple saw an opportunity to escape during a trip to the 1986 Berlin Film Festival. While in Vienna, Austria, they managed to elude their bodyguards and sought political asylum at the U.S. Embassy. They were granted asylum and lived quietly in the United States until 1999. Choi never acted in films again, but Shin continued his career, directing the 1992 American martial arts comedy Three Ninjas Knuckle Up under the name Simon Sheen, though it was not a commercial success. Eventually, they felt safe enough to return to South Korea, where Choi was warmly welcomed and honored for her contributions to cinema. In 2014, she was awarded the Order of Cultural Merit. The corpse that still attends meetings. Jeremy Bentham was an English philosopher and social reformer, best known as the founder of modern utilitarianism. In 1769, at just 21 years old, Bentham made an unusual request in his will. Upon his death, he wanted his body to be dissected by his friend, physician and chemist George Fordyce, and then preserved as an auto-icon for display. He believed that his body could continue to contribute to society through medical education and by promoting his philosophical ideals. Bentham died on June 6, 1832, at the age of 84, at his home in Queen Square Place, Westminster, London. His friend and physician Thomas Southwood Smith carried out his instructions. Bentham's skeleton was preserved and padded with linen to create a lifelike appearance, dressed in his own clothes, and seated in a chair as if engaged in deep thought. He had also requested that his auto-icon be present at meetings between friends and disciples, symbolically representing the founder of the greatest happiness system of morals and legislation. This led to the myth that Bentham's preserved body is wheeled into every University College London UCL council meeting and recorded as present but not voting. While this is not a regular practice, his auto-icon does make occasional appearances during special university events. Bentham's auto-icon was acquired by UCL on Gower Street in 1850, where it still resides today in a wooden cabinet in the south cloisters of the main building. Bentham is considered a spiritual founder of UCL due to his advocacy for education accessible to all, regardless of wealth or religious background. Originally, Bentham wanted his actual head preserved using a method practiced by the Maori of New Zealand. Unfortunately, the preservation process did not go as planned, resulting in a discolored and unsettling appearance. A wax head featuring some of his original hair was created to replace it. The real head was eventually placed at the feet of the auto-icon, but became the target of student pranks, including thefts and even being used in football matches. In 1975, students from King's College London stole the head and demanded a ransom for charity. It was later found in a locker at an Aberdeen railway station in Scotland. Due to these incidents, the real head is now securely stored and refrigerated in the vaults of UCL. Bentham's decision to become an auto-icon was influenced by his utilitarian philosophy, which promotes actions that maximize happiness and well-being for the majority. He also had a keen sense of humor. It's said that he carried the two glass eyes intended for his auto-icon in his pockets for a decade, showing friends what he planned for his remains. This U.S. pilot shot down an American plane and got the kill war, often forces individuals to make extraordinarily difficult decisions. On February 10, 1945, over the island of Bataan in the Philippines, United States Army Air Force's Lieutenant Louis Edward Kurtz faced such a predicament. Kurtz, piloting his P-51 Mustang fighter nicknamed Bad Angel, spotted a U.S. Army C-47 transport plane attempting to land at a Japanese-held airfield. Realizing the catastrophic consequences if the plane landed, potentially delivering personnel and equipment directly into enemy hands. He had to act quickly. Despite attempts to signal the pilot and divert the aircraft, there was no response. With a heavy heart, Curtiz made the decision to disable the transport plane by firing at its engines. Born in Indiana on November 2, 1919, Curtiz became a fighter pilot in 1942. He served in North Africa and Italy, flying the P-38 Lightning. In less than 6 months, he achieved 8 confirmed kills against German and Italian aircraft, becoming a decorated ace. In one notable mission, he shot down 3 German Bf-109s in a single day. After being shot down himself and spending time as a prisoner of war, Curtiz escaped captivity following Italy's surrender. He was later transferred to the Pacific Theater to fight against Japan, now flying the P-51 Mustang. On February 7, 1945, he shot down a Japanese Mitsubishi Ki-46 Dyna reconnaissance plane, making him one of the few pilots to have downed aircraft from all 3 major Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. 3 days later, during a mission over Bataan, Curtiz and his squadron attacked a Japanese airfield. One of his fellow pilots was shot down but survived after ditching his aircraft at sea. It was then that Curtiz spotted the C-47 transport plane lowering its landing gear to approach the enemy airstrip. Attempts to communicate failed due to the transport's faulty radio. Believing that the plane might have been captured or that the crew was unaware they were about to land in enemy territory, Curtiz decided to act. He fired at one of the transport's engines, disabling it. When the plane continued its descent, he targeted the second engine. The transport was forced to ditch in the nearby sea. All 12 crew members and passengers survived the water landing and evacuated into life rafts, including 2 Army nurses. Curtiz circled overhead, providing protection until he was low on fuel and had to return to base. The next morning, he led a rescue seaplane to their location, and everyone was safely recovered. In a remarkable twist, one of the nurses on board the downed C-47 was Svetlana Valeria Shostak, whom Curtiz had recently started dating. Despite the dramatic incident, their relationship continued, and they married on April 2, 1946. They remained together until Curtiz's death on February 5, 1995, just days short of the 50th anniversary of the event. For his actions, Lieutenant Curtiz was credited with shooting down the American C-47, adding an unusual friendly fire kill to his record. His story stands as a unique and poignant example of the complexities and tough choices faced in wartime.